Hello, and welcome to the very first Game Week review, where I have a look at my predictions, and then we have a look what actually happened and see how far from the truth my predictions were. And we also give out a few awards. We give out Managerial Masterpiece, we give out Baller of the Week, the biggest stinker for the worst game, and the biggest shock of the Game Week. So, with that being said, let's get into the results. So to kick the game week off, we had Wolves versus West Brom. On paper, it didn't look like there was many goals in this game at all, and I went with a prediction of 1-0 win to Wolverhampton Wanderers. But it was actually West Brom that came away the victors in a 5-goal thriller, winning 3-2 away from home. Who'd have thought it? So I was very wrong here indeed. So this game, which was actually featured first on Match of the Day, was actually Sam Allardyce's first win, and it had some comical defending in it, particularly for that second Wolves goal. Awful defended from a corner. But West Brom managed to get the victory thanks to two relatively soft pens, I have to say, and a set piece situation, so taking advantage of those set pieces. But this is an all-important victory for West Brom, and they really need to start picking up those W's if they're going to have any chance of survival. For Wolves, this is a disappointing one to lose. Wolves are not having a season that they're not having a great season. Maybe that's down to losing key players like Jota, and they wouldn't have expected to have Jimenez out for this portion of the season. As I say, he is in light training again, so they'll be thankful to have him back. I got one right. Yes, I did indeed. My prediction was 1-0 to West Ham versus Burnley, and that was indeed the score. The breakthrough for West Ham came very early on in the 9th minute when a cross came in, and there was two Burnley players well positioned to deal with the cross, but it just seemed to melt with like a knife through butter through the defenders, and the ball found itself at the feet of Mikel Antonio, who was able to convert the chance into a goal, and it triggered some interesting celebration, some practicing a different sport, doing his backstroke, which you love to see it. Some interesting celebrations in this game week, another one I'll come on to later. But yeah, Mikel Antonio delivering the goods, and David Moyes earning the 3 points. And this is actually the 4th game now that West Ham have not conceded a single goal. So I think that's probably down to Ogbonna, who I think is a exceptional centre back, and I think he may be top 6 quality in all fairness. So maybe there should be some big teams looking at him in the future. But Burnley, on the other hand, they just don't look like scoring. They just don't look like scoring, and they're going to need to start scoring goals if they're going to not get dragged into that bottom 3, especially with Fulham on their coattails really starting to play some better football, and they've picked up a series of draws in a row now, starting to play some good football. They could see themselves drop into the bottom 3 if they're not careful. From a game that I thought wouldn't have many goals at all to a game that I expected there to be lots of goals, and it didn't turn out that way. Leeds versus Brighton. I predicted a 4-1 victory to Leeds, but it wasn't like that at all, and it was actually Brighton that went home the victors here with scraping a 1-0 victory. In the first half, it was all Brighton, and their first goal, Jesus, it was tiki-taka like prime Barcelona, and then the squared ball to Mopai, who just had to stroke it home. It was absolutely fantastic play by Brighton, looking like a top 4 team, not a team that's scrapping in the relegation zone. In fact, after the first goal, Brighton continued to put the pressure on Leeds, and they actually hit the bar in the first half as well. But Leeds were without their talisman in Calvin Phillips, having picked up too many yellow cards during the course of the season and missing this game through suspension. Leeds really didn't start to play at all until around that 65th minute mark, in which they decided to turn up to the game, and they were putting the pressure on Brighton. But ultimately, Brighton were able to put in a solid defensive performance in those last 25 minutes and see out the victory and have an important 3 points for Brighton and Graham Potter. This next game, Chelsea versus Fulham, I predicted an upset here. I predicted a 1-1 draw to come from this game, but in reality, Chelsea were able to scrape by with a 1-0 victory. This game started with a big statement from Frankie Lampard. Both Timo Werner and Kai Havertz were sitting on the bench for this game. Now, my personal opinion was, because they played in the FA Cup match, and Werner scored in that match and Kai Havertz got an assist in that match, I thought that they were playing in that match to build confidence for the Premier League matches. But maybe it was a case where they were left out because they were never intended to play this match, which is very interesting and a big statement from Frank Lampard, considering how much those two signings cost in the summer. But Chelsea, they really did ride their luck in times, and Fulham were playing very, very nice football. In fact, they probably had the best chance of the first half when the ball was rolled back to Caballero in the box, literally in the middle of the goal, in the box, and he took a swipe at the ball, trying to side-foot it into the bottom corner, and it actually hit his standing leg and went well wide, and I think it even went over as well. It was an awful finish, one of the misses of the season potentially. The breakthrough that Chelsea needed, or the slice of luck, didn't actually come from a Chelsea player. It came through the red card decision from Robinson for Fulham, just diving into a challenge that was just completely unnecessary. Certainly unnecessary to put that much force on the challenge. There are arguments that it wasn't a red card because he didn't really have his boot raised, and it's not one of those where the player goes flying into a player with his stud showing and it plants right on the ankle. It was excessive force, definitely, and it did send Azpilicueta flying in the air, which made it look like a horrific challenge. So I personally don't have many qualms with the decision itself. And then late on into the second half, Mason Mount with great technique strikes a bouncing ball to make it 1-0 to Chelsea. And then the game really did open out quite a bit. And in fact, Werner had a great chance. It was a great first touch. It was one-on-one, which led him to be one-on-one with the keeper. And for RB Leipzig, Werner's scoring 19 out of 20 of those chances, but for Chelsea, he missed, and not only did he miss, he put it a good 2 or 3 yards wide. A one-on-one glorious opportunity, good chance to make him raise his confidence. But maybe that's justification for Lampard leaving him out of the squad. The next game had me predicting a very tight affair in which Leicester versus Southampton would draw 1-1. In reality, Leicester were able to, on paper, had a comfortable victory in a 2-0 win against Southampton. The opener for Leicester came from a run that was Jamie Vardy-esque from James Maddison, in which he was running off the shoulder of the last man. Gets the beating of him with pace. It seemed like the defender was trying to just out-strength him, but he was able to get beyond him, and then he absolutely smashed it past the keeper in at that near post. Keeper not really having much chance at all in that one. Following that though, Southampton did have some great chances, and in particular Che Adams forcing a fabulous save by Cassius Schmeichel, and from distance Southampton also rattling the bar. After riding out some good pressure from Southampton, Leicester remained defensively strong, and as the clock ticked past the 90, Southampton just completely threw caution to the wind, and it gave Leicester a good opportunity on the counter-attack. Tielemans playing in Harvey Barnes, who was one-on-one with the keeper and able to slot it home. So Harvey Barnes continuing his great scoring run and making it 2-0 to Leicester City. My prediction for the Spurs game was that Spurs would win and scrape a victory of 1-0. In reality, it ended 3-1, and I underestimated just how poor Sheffield United are defensively and how poor a team that they do look this season. I think last week's result, getting their first win, maybe threw doubt in my mind about how poor of a team that Sheffield United have been this season, but they continued with their poor performances in this game. First goal for Spurs came through a corner kick that was played, and Aurier with the converting the header to make it 1-0 to Spurs. And honestly, if you're Wilder, that's got to be frustrating. Conceding an early goal from a corner kick. And the second goal for Spurs pretty much summarised why Sheffield United are where they are. Sheffield United lost the ball. A player took a very heavy touch and just allowed a Spurs player just to win possession. And then the players didn't show any fight at all to close down that ball or regain possession, and they just stood off Kane and allowed him to carry the ball forward and then just drill it, which it was a great, powerful strike into that bottom right-hand corner, but it was just too easy for Harry Kane, and the Sheffield United players just showing no fight. And if they continue to show no fight like this, they will be going down 100%. Sheffield United did hit back though, a very good header from McGoldrick, but then Ndombele with a wonderful finish, literally straight after the McGoldrick goal. You thought, okay, there's been question marks over Jose Mourinho not killing games. Could Sheffield United come back from 2-0 down and get something out this game? But I mean, those debates were quickly squashed when the ball was played. The bouncing ball was played through to Ndombele, and he kind of hits it with his outside of his foot, and he loops it over, and then it hits the post and goes in. It was just a really inventive, remarkable finish from Ndombele. Now, the game of the game week, surely the two top of the table teams, Manchester United and Liverpool, battled it out for a 0-0 victory. Now, I predicted a draw, I predicted 1-1, but Jesus. For a neutral, I can see how this game was a snore fest. However, as a United fan, it was still not entertaining for me, I would say, necessarily, but I was certainly on the edge of my seat just because of what it meant, this game. So, but as a neutral, I can understand how, and certainly for the biggest game possibly of the Premier League season, two intense rivalries, it wasn't a good showing for Premier League football in general. First 30 minutes, it was literally all Liverpool. It looked like attack versus defence. Thankfully, Man United's defence remained resolute, but Liverpool with all the possession, Man United, when they received the ball, they were just losing it, and it was just sustained attack after attack after attack. Even though Liverpool didn't convert any of that sustained pressure to good, clear opportunities. And to be honest, Liverpool had the majority of the possession throughout the entire match, but it was actually Manchester United who had the better of the chances. Bruno Fernandes with a free kick in a really good position, and it was a well-struck free kick, got it up and down, but it was just millimetres wide of the post, and it had Alisson scrambling, and I don't think he would have got there. You had Bruno Fernandes again with a pullback from Luke Shaw into the box. Luke Shaw was probably man of the match, defensively very strong, and he offered something going forward as well. The pullback to Bruno, he side-footed it, and it was the only stop by the outstretched leg of Alisson, which was probably the save of the match. And then Paul Pogba as well with a volley that smashed it really, really hard, but it was unfortunately right at the body of Alisson. I mean, a tree would have saved it because it was literally right at the keeper, but it hit it with so much power. If that's either side of Alisson, that's going in. But unfortunately, United were unable to convert those chances. And on the balance of things, thinking about that first half that Liverpool had, especially the first 30 minutes, United with a better second half, probably the better the chances. I think a draw was a fair result. And then to round off the Sunday, we had Manchester City versus Crystal Palace. I predicted a 2-0 win to Man City. In fact, it was a little bit better than that for City. It was a 4-0 win, and this game had some ridiculously good goals in it. The first goal was Kevin De Bruyne with just an absolutely amazing outside of the foot cross into John Stones, who headed home to make it 1-0, and then Gundogan to make it 2, shifted the ball out of his feet and rocketed it into the top right hand corner. Just a wonderful performance, and probably the pick of the goals was probably Raheem Sterling with the 4th, with a great free kick. And it's really interesting to see that Raheem Sterling can look so confident on a free kick with players all in front, and look so nervous and unconfident taking a penalty kick. But I guess that's a discussion for another day. But I mean, the player of the match, I guess, and probably had one of the games of his life, was John Stones, getting a clean sheet and then getting 2 goals as well. It was his first goal at the Etihad. And he managed to get 2 in the same game. But for Crystal Palace, it's got to be frustrating for Roy Hodgson. I mean, they just never looked like scoring. They never looked like they were in the game, and they were just outclassed by a better team. And that's the best way I can put it for Crystal Palace. The final match of the game week was Arsenal versus Newcastle, and I predicted a relatively easy performance, easy victory by Arsenal, 2-0. It panned out that way, and it was a very easy 3 points for Arsenal, but it was actually 3-0 in which the score ended up. A brace from Aubameyang, but not before he missed what could be one of the misses of the season, certainly. Open goal, tries to side foot it, and it comes off the bar. But Arsenal having some really good youth talent coming through at the moment. Saka's obviously looking like a very, very good player for England as well. He's looked good. And Smith Rowe looks like another good youngster. And at the moment, he's solving their kind of creativity void that Ozil has left, or that Arsenal haven't filled since Ozil has been out of the team. But Newcastle, honestly, they look so poor. I genuinely think that they're going to get dragged into a relegation battle. Like, they have Wilson, but if anything happened to him, if anything happened to Callum Wilson, then I'll tip them for going down, even though there is still that little bit of a gap from the relegation zone. I think it's only about 4 points now, to be fair. So they are getting dragged into it. So that leaves me just enough time to hand out my prestigious awards. The first one being the biggest shock. Now, I think the biggest shock has to be Wolves versus West Brom. I mean, not only is the result a little bit of a shock with Sam Allardyce getting the first win, but the amount of goals as well that were in that game, 5-goal thriller, when both teams haven't scored much all season. So that was a big shock, so I'm going to have to give it to that game. Next up, managerial masterpiece. I'm going to have to give this to Graham Potter for his Brighton for Brighton's performance against Leeds, they played a lot better football than Leeds at times. It was only those last 30 minutes really that Leeds started to get back into the game, and Brighton could have scored more goals, particularly in that first half. And to keep Leeds to nil when they're at home, and the expansive football that you associate with Leeds is very impressive. So congratulations, Graham. You've won a managerial masterpiece. The biggest stinker, it's only got to be one game, unfortunately, and that is, for a neutral at least, it is the Man United versus Liverpool game. So much expectation in the game. The eyes of everyone around the world, in the biggest league in the world, focusing on the biggest game of the Premier League, had so much expectation, so much build-up. It's the most important United-Liverpool game in years, considering where each are relative in the table, and it was a stinker. I can't lie. For me personally, yes, I was on the edge of my seat, but for a neutral watching, geez, it must have been a pretty dead game. So unfortunately, I have to say that game gets the biggest stinker. And the baller of the week can only go to one man, scoring his first goal at the Etihad and then literally following it up with a brace in the same match, and keeping a clean sheet. It has to go to John Stones, who is playing magnificently well recently at Man City. And when Laporte comes back for City, it'll be interesting to see the dynamic, what happens there. I think he has to keep his place. He's been getting man of the match performances. City have been keeping clean sheets. I mean, Laporte, you would think is so important to that City side, but John Stones, he's undroppable at the moment for City. So John Stones gets the baller of the week. Congrats, John. And hopefully you don't get it next week and City lose. So thank you all for watching. This has been my game week review. Hopefully you did enjoy the video. Let me know that you enjoyed it by hitting that like button. If you enjoy the content and you're a new viewer, then please consider hitting that subscribe button. And also you can find me live on Twitch at twitch.tv/RNA_deck. And I'm live for the majority of, every single Man United game. So when there's a Man United game, click that link, have a look, you'll find me, I'll be live, and come and have a little discussion with us about the game or about whatever's on your mind. How about that? Okay, so I will see you for Game Week 20 match day predictions. See you soon.